A Mississippi man with a criminal history was locked up in Tennessee for kidnapping and beating his girlfriend. Now police say when he got out, he killed her. We're diving into this chilling case and the possible repercussions with criminal defense attorney Danielle Jackson. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. We're going to tell you a story, and I want to go in chronological order because it's going to emphasize how heartbreaking this is. And the question becomes, could the killing that I'm about to describe, could it have been prevented? So 23-year-old Bricen John Rivers was arrested in Nashville while on vacation with his girlfriend, Lauren Johansen. And this was after he was accused of holding her hostage and beating her while in a car, including reportedly assaulting her while parked in a parking lot. In fact, it was reported that Lauren had called her family telling them she thought Rivers was going to kill her. So the family calls police. Officers were able to track them down. They were able to pinpoint Lauren's location, said that they could hear her banging on the car door as she tried to get away. Now, Rivers was allegedly seen reaching for a handgun in the back seat of the car, but officers were able to intercept him, arrest him, detain him. Lauren, she ended up in the hospital with severe injuries, but she went back home to Mississippi. Meanwhile, Rivers was charged with kidnapping and interference. Now, Lauren's father, Lance Johansen, who we're going to talk about a lot on the show, told WLX News that he warned the judge overseeing the case at the time, criminal court judge Cheryl Blackburn, that Rivers should not be let out of jail. Quote, "I sat in the courtroom in Nashville and told the judge that if they let him out, he was going to kill her. He had assaulted her. This was probably the 5th or 6th time where they would get into a fight and he would beat her. We would get her away from him for a while, but he would find a way to weasel back in." That, by the way, was December 2023. So what happens? Rivers spent 7 months in jail before the judge decided to lower his $250,000 bond to $150,000. And you want to know what happened? He posted it, and he was released. So Rivers was supposed to get fitted for a GPS monitor, but apparently that didn't happen. No, instead, police say he left Tennessee, he headed for Mississippi. Lauren's family, by the way, was supposed to be notified if Rivers was released, but they say that didn't happen soon enough. Why? Because 5 days after Rivers was let go, Lauren's dead body was found in the backseat of her car in a cemetery. She had reportedly been wrapped in sheets and trash bags. Lance claimed his daughter was beaten to death. We're currently awaiting the results of an autopsy at the time of this recording, but 22 years old. That's what we're talking about. I want to bring in criminal defense attorney Danielle Jackson to talk a little bit more about this. Danielle, thanks so much for coming on and coming here on Sidebar.
No problem.
Unfortunately, my understanding is these kinds of alleged or domestic violence situations that turn deadly, you've worked on a lot of these cases, right?
Yes,
And
a lot of.
Do you see similarities between this and the ones you've covered?
Yes, a lot of times bail is set, especially if the allegations are as egregious as it sounds like the car incident was. Very high bail is usually set in those cases. And then, you know, if a client of mine, I work for indigent clients, are unable to afford bail, we do request the bail to be lowered. And there's usually conditions such as GPS monitoring, at least in the state of New York, where that is an option for people. So I've worked on a lot of these.
We're going to get into that in a second. Just from broad picture point of view, looking at this, the allegations, yes, they're allegations, right? He hasn't been proven guilty yet. But this young, 23, 22 years old, do you see those kinds of cases?
Unfortunately, yes. I think that for me, in the last 10 years, I've been seeing a lot of domestic violence cases for young people under the age of 25. I will say not sometimes, you know, as escalated as this, but we do see quite a few cases.
Hey, everybody, we'll get right back to this episode in just a second. But listen, one of the reasons we're able to bring you content like this and bring you these stories is because of the amazing support that we get from our partners. And I want to talk about one right now, Upside. I want to thank them for sponsoring this episode of Sidebar. So Upside is a free app that gets you cash back on daily essentials like gas, groceries, and dining. Now, believe it or not, I do know how to pump my own gas. I don't know if that was controversial or not, but I do. And when I do, why not use Upside? I can get cash back when I fill up my tank. Makes sense, right? And yes, this is actual real cash back, no confusing rewards or points or credits, just actual money I can transfer straight to my bank account. So once you have the app, you can claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside. You pay as usual using a debit or credit card, and you follow the steps on the app, and you get paid. Now, as you just saw me do, you can use Upside at places like Shell, Exxon Mobil, 7-Eleven, Sunoco, restaurants like Chipotle, Papa John's, Dairy Queen, Domino's, KFC, Taco Bell, that's just to name a few. So to find out how much you can earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on screen and use our promo code SIDEBAR and you'll get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. That's promo code SIDEBAR for an extra 25 cents back on your first gallon of gas. So I'm glad I have you here because I want to ask you something. So Lance, Lauren's father, says he eventually receives a voicemail from the Davidson County DA's office. And remember, they were supposed to notify the family if this guy was let out. And this is the voicemail that was obtained by WLOX News. Now, we don't have the copy of the actual voicemail, but this is what it is. Quote, "This is Bailey calling from the district attorney's office in Nashville. Bricen Rivers was released from custody. He was supposed to report straight to a GPS company and be put on a GPS monitor, and he was not to leave Davidson County. But as soon as he was released, he did not report to that GPS monitoring company, and he has not been heard from. I wanted to make sure Lauren is safe." So Lance tries to call his daughter immediately. She doesn't pick up. He says that the messages he received from her didn't really sound like how she would normally text. This is on a Monday. And then at around, it's reported 4 a.m. on Tuesday, Lance says he got a notification on his phone saying his daughter's Life 360 tracker app was turned off. His other daughter, who had been living with Lauren, said her sister wasn't home. The front door was open. Their security camera was destroyed. He calls police in Mississippi, and he said to WLOX that, quote, "They didn't do anything. We assumed they were going to track the vehicle and try to find her, but they never did it until Wednesday at 3 o'clock when I insisted they find out where the car was." And that's when they reportedly tracked Lauren's car using OnStar to that cemetery. And the police and Lance, who, by the way, accompanied law enforcement, they find Lauren dead. Now, aside from the fact of a father finding his own daughter in that way, and we'll get into that in a second, I don't understand how that happened. I don't understand how you have somebody who's released and they have to actually turn up for GPS monitoring. They're not brought there.
It depends on the jurisdiction. Some jurisdictions have it where there's a sheriff's office that will meet the person at the local jail and then will transport them to the sheriff's office where they usually do the ankle monitoring setup system. There are other jurisdictions, however, where this person, after they've made bond, is supposed to self-check in at these sites.
He can't be the first one to allegedly have done this, right? I'm imagining people don't show up.
It does happen. I wouldn't say, at least in New York, it happens that often, but it does happen, which is why you see a lot of judges sometimes a little reluctant about doing it, unless you're assured them that there's some type of escort that's already prearranged, or that there's going to be this sheriff's officer or some other law enforcement officer personally taking them from the jail to the site.
And by the way, with the DA's office, we'll talk about them a little bit later because they opposed the judge ultimately not imposing a stricter bond amount, and we'll talk about that in a second, but reaching out to the family too late. Now, again, it could be because they were notified too late about what happened, but it seems like there was a failure here. Would you agree with that?
I think there are multiple failures here. If we're going to start with the court, I think that, depending on how their system is set up, either a clerk or a victim's advocate or something is usually supposed to be on top of it when someone is going to be released to immediately notify the victim in their case that this person is now going to be out in the streets, and also to make sure that they understand what the limitations were. Again, he was supposed to have the GPS and not leave, I believe, Davidson County. And then after that, usually the DA who's working the case is also supposed to be making sure that they're reaching out and checking in and figuring it out. Also, it's unclear here, did the sheriff's office or whoever is doing the GPS monitoring notify the court? Like, who's supposed to do all these notifications? It seems like there are quite a few lost moments. And
just taking a step back, because not putting the full blame on the DA's office, not particularly putting the blame on anybody, trying to understand the situation, Stephen Hayslip with the DA's office in Nashville told WLOX that its office had opposed this reduced bond amount that ultimately led to Rivers getting released or making that bond. But it's ultimately up to the judge, right? And the judge in this case, Cheryl Blackburn, again, how is that possible? How does it work if the DA's office is opposing it and you have the victim's family who's opposing it? Why would the judge be in a position to actually lower it? And again, we don't know a lot of the circumstances of this, but what the allegations were pretty horrendous about aggravated kidnapping and attacking her.
Yeah, but the bail laws are just supposed to be set to ensure that someone is not going to be a flight risk. And so because you cannot afford a higher amount, that doesn't mean you should spend pre-trial or pre-sentence time incarcerated. It's to make sure that people are not just sitting in jail because they're poor. So what they do is they set an amount. You then try to get the amount together, and then once there's been multiple times or somebody's tried to make that amount and they still can't make it, then judges do go back. They're asking usually defense attorneys, well, how much can this person's family afford? And then that's when we usually see that after several months of someone not being able to afford bail, some judges are more likely than not okay with lowering.
So in other words, we might be angry right now, but there could be a number of factors that would have allowed the judge to make that determination. And hindsight's 2020. It might be difficult to predict. Although I will tell you, if you listen to the family's version, they warned this would happen, and this is what allegedly happened. And it wasn't like he was picked up on, burglarizing a home or even stealing from a store and then murder somebody, right? He was arrested for attacking her, and then he's now brought up on murder charges because of this. And by the way, Lance, again, Lance Johansen, her father, told local media, quote, "I think the criminal justice system in Nashville, Tennessee failed my daughter and our family. The world shouldn't work this way. She was really beautiful, super, super smart. She had dreams and hopes that were larger than life. Everything she did, everything she touched turned to gold." Now, obviously, law enforcement and the DA's office might have a different version of events, but I am curious, at this point in time, do you think they've opened themselves up to litigation, to a lawsuit that could be filed by the family?
I think if you pull back all of the layers of this and trying to figure out, like, one, who was supposed to do all the notifications, what exactly was supposed to happen when he was released from the county jail, and ensuring he made it to the GPS thing, if they get through the bottom of that and there seems like there were some pitfalls there, absolutely I can see where a civil lawsuit can come in.
And you talk about even like emotional distress claims, right? I mean, because Lance said that he helped carry his daughter's mutilated body out of that car, helped the coroner. Can't even imagine what that's like. Because again, this is somebody who warned that this was what he was worried was going to happen. So I imagine, again, that there could be something there.
Also, you have to think about what happened when, I believe they're in Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
Or Mississippi, excuse me.
Well, it was Mississippi where she was killed, but Tennessee was originally where the arrest happened. Back in the day for the kidnapping.
The other part of this is the Mississippi side, right? He
Right.
reports her missing, and then there's still a delay of them looking for her. And then you find out she has OnStar. Why wasn't that immediately looked into? Once you see that the door is open,
Right.
security cameras bashed in. So now we have issues in both jurisdictions here that could have led to a different story.
That's why we're talking about it. It shouldn't have happened. If you ask me, it shouldn't have happened. And here's the thing, the evidence against him. Let's talk about the evidence against Rivers. We talked about it a little bit, but apparently also Rivers was actually seen running away from the scene into a wooded area. There was a manhunt all night Wednesday, reportedly drones, dozens of officers, air support dogs. Reporting indicates that law enforcement knew Rivers had his phone on him. So what they did is they started texting him to make it look like he was talking with a friend. And that's how they were able to lure him out of the woods. And there's this footage from a police helicopter apparently showing Rivers running out of the woods and straight into the Harrison County Sheriff's deputy. Multiple officers take him down. He was arrested. He's booked for Lauren's murder. This time, he's on a $1 million bond in Harrison County, Mississippi. I can't know what a defense would be at this point. I don't think you tell me what a defense would be like.
It's going to be extremely hard. Right now, just in my head, I can't come up with one, especially what they saw when they got to the scene.
Right.
I'm assuming at some point someone may be asking for some type of psych evaluation just to check that out and see if that's a clearance there. But I'm also still surprised about the money bail on the murder charge.
You think there should have been no bail?
In New York, when I have clients who come in on murder, it's remand. There is no amount of money that's going to get someone out. So I'm also curious to know how that system works.
So, I mean, I wish it didn't take a case like this for people to start asking questions about it. And talking about questions, Lance says, again, Lauren's father, that Rivers' behavior in Nashville and the other arrests on his criminal records should have been enough to keep him locked up, because this is a part we didn't talk about yet. So in 2021, we did some digging on his prior arrests for Bricen Rivers. And in 2021, he was apparently arrested in Hancock County, Mississippi. 2022, he was arrested for drug possession, and in his mugshot, his face is seemingly scratched up, but he still smiles. And then in 2023, Rivers' mugshot shows him with blood on his face after, again, he purportedly assaulted Lauren, held her captive. And in 2024, now we have his fourth mugshot as he faces charges for murders. We see this escalation in cases like this, these domestic violence cases, right? So talk to us about that, how you kind of see that building over time with these perpetrators or alleged perpetrators.
It's usually something small. Sometimes we also see they have a juvenile record for like criminal mischief in the home. You usually see they have some issues with their parents, usually starting out, and then progressively it gets worse. So there are some times where you see minor, simple assaults that then escalate to assaults with weapons, and then unfortunately, in the really, really bad ones, you see it all the way up to murder charges.
Going back to the question, of course, is if he has this record, why was his bond reduced? Why was he even issued bond in the first place, given, again, a kidnapping charge back in December? Why would it be that someone that has this should be let out? And by the way, again, I don't know the particulars of that jurisdiction, but allowed to self-report for GPS monitoring. Again, it strikes me as very frustrating.
So depending on what the bail laws are of that state, the judge has the discretion to consider different factors as to why they would lower bail or not. So I think it will go into what the ultimate conviction was for, the underlying allegations of those prior convictions. And then sometimes there are offenses where people are, like, the law does not allow you to consider that type of conviction for bail. So I think it is really going to be about the weeds of their bail structure.
Such a horrible situation.
Very
and
sad.
Again, I wish it didn't take a case like this for people to start asking questions, and maybe there'd be a change in the law so something like this doesn't happen ever again. But bringing it back to Lauren, so Dr. Lance Johansen, he's a doctor, he's an orthopedic surgeon in Gulfport, Mississippi. He started a GoFundMe page in memory of his daughter, saying she was an animal lover. She was studying to become a registered nurse. He wrote on the GoFundMe page, "When Lauren almost died last time, she told me the following: if he gets out and kills me, please find a way to take care of Bentley, Joe, Marley, Coco, Kyler, Christian, Caitlin, and Mom." So that includes not only her younger siblings, but her pets as well. Again, just a really sad case, and she almost predicted what was going to happen to her. Again, if you assume the allegations are true.
It's quite eerie.
Yeah.
And it's, like you said, sad all around, and I'm certain that there are going to be quite some changes happening in Mississippi and in Tennessee based off of this case.
Danielle Jackson, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Jesse.
You got it. All right, everybody, that's all we have for you right now here on Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.